What is up, Yankee fans? This is a new look Pinstripe Chronicles right now because Tats is out. We wish Tats a happy Father's Day, though. He is our leader, and we miss him already, but we can't wait to have him back on the next podcast. But this is a good opportunity for me to actually wish all the fathers out there a happy Father's Day. My father passed away 8 years ago, but he always was a guy that wanted me to follow my dreams. That's what dads are. That's what true dads are. And rest in peace to my father, and my love to him and to everyone out there. Okay, niceties out the way. Rob, how are you?
Oh, aside from our baseball team, I'm doing good. How about you?
I am fine. I'm a little numb to this. It's not a surprise. None of this is a surprise. But I think it's a pretty grim statement that I'd like to make, that the Yankees' $300 million payroll is more than their on-base percentage. Their on-base percentage is below 300. That is shocking. And that is historically bad, because if this continues to the end of the year, this would be the Yankees' worst season in terms of on-base percentage since the creation of the DH in 1973. That is what we're talking about. This is the historic levels of ineptitude from this organization, and you cannot blame it on Aaron Judge being missing. You cannot blame it on him, because this was absolutely imperative for Brian Cashman to put a team around him. That's why Aaron Judge came back. He was led to believe that the Yankees would try and put a team around him. But Brian Cashman did the exact opposite. He sent out a team this year without a left fielder. And now we've got infielders playing outfield. We've got DHs playing outfield. You've got people all over the place. There's absolutely no defense. And all of it is Brian Cashman. They've got a horrible hitting coach. He is the worst hitting coach in the majors. He's so freaking bad, right? And you can certainly blame Dylan Lawson. I can't wait to blame Dylan Lawson. I think he's doing a terrible job. But guess what? 100% of the blame is on Brian Cashman. 100, right? Now, you could look at individual things. You could look at the fact that Dylan Lawson's a terrible hitting coach. Well, who hired him? Brian Cashman, right? This whole team's injured. Well, who's trading for all these injured players? Oh, Brian Cashman. Who's hired this medical staff? Oh, Brian Cashman, right? You could look at Aaron Boone, who I don't even think he's done a particularly bad job. I don't think he's done a great job this year. He's done an adequate job. He still cost his team about half a dozen games, maybe. Off the top of my head, he's not really helped us win any games, but they've not been awful in terms of where you'd expect with this roster. But guess what? This team's done nothing in 6 years. And so you can blame Aaron Boone, but who hired Aaron Boone? You guessed it, Brian Cashman. So no matter where you look, you have to look at Brian Cashman. He put this nonsensical team together. There was so many holes in this team when the team got swept in the playoffs. But Brian Cashman was so determined to feed us bullshit. He was so determined to feed us bullshit that, this team's fine. This team's great. It was just your fault as fans that you had expectations that they wouldn't get swept. Imagine getting sold that. And then him selling to us, oh, yeah, we really needed Benintendi. That's why I went and got him. But I didn't bother needing to re-sign him or any left fielder at all going into this year. So, I mean, that's more bullshit. We're just fed constant bullshit. Oh, Josh Donaldson. This team is just Josh Donaldson being old Josh Donaldson away from being really, really good. Well, he's the same Josh Donaldson. He's awful. So, I mean, wherever you look, it's bullshit that we're being fed. This team is substandard. There's so many issues no matter where you look. And I can't look at anyone else but Brian Cashman, front and center. He's put together a horrific team. It's so problematic, and we are going to go through this roster. There's so many problems with this roster. No matter where I look, I see a problem. And that's it's really not good. So let's bring it to my co-host, Rob. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I can't really deny anything that you just said. I can't say anything that you just said is wrong because everything points back to Brian Cashman. And even with Lawson, as bad as he is, and the fact that we have 3 hitting coaches right now and no one can figure out what's wrong with this offense. If you listen to Dylan Lawson yesterday, they interviewed him after the first game. When do you ever see a hitting coach get interviewed when the team's not hitting? And what did he do? He gave you the script. He gave you the script of, I'm not going to answer your question. I'm just going to read you this long, dribbled out nonsense that is going to dance around your question and tell you everything's going to be okay. That is exactly what Cashman has done for years. It's exactly what Aaron Boone does, and that is now what the coaches are going to do. It's the same old nonsense, and I don't want to necessarily blame Lawson because we did the same thing with Timms. We did the same thing with Kevin Long for a while. This is a Brian Cashman thing. This is obviously a Brian Cashman thing. And I said this when the core 4 was officially gone and Jeter was the last to go. It became a Cashman team. It became Cashman's team. He started to call up his own prospects. He made all the moves. He no longer had to worry about sustaining the legendary core 4, any of them, even though Jeter's last year missed the playoffs. But he didn't have to worry about anything like that anymore. The old Yankees were gone, and this was now a Cashman team. And since then, we had one really good season where we came very close to getting to the World Series, but that was a season where we had no expectations. After we had expectations, we haven't been able to live up to it. And it's the same old nonsense. But my biggest issue with this team is their inability to just try something different. You mentioned the fact that we have no outfield. We have 3 players that were minor league contract signings, McKinney, Calhoun, and Bowers, all on this roster. And to their credit, they have hit pretty well considering what their expectations were, but they don't play defense very well, especially Bowers. And we saw that in the first game. He can't play the Green Monster. And Aaron Boone said, well, had we not gotten rained out, Giancarlo Stanton would have played left field. Then when he was asked why he didn't play left field in the first game, he said, well, I didn't want him to play the outfield and then DH. It's exactly what you do with a player like Giancarlo Stanton. Is you play him in the field one game, and then you can still keep his bat in the second game. Why are we coddling him? He just came off the IL. He's a slow starter coming back from the IL. The best way to get him going is to put him in the lineup every single day and hope that he can run into one. Even if he goes 1 for 4, if that one hits a home run and he strikes out the other 3 at-bats, you need that. You need to get his bat going. Sitting him or refusing to play him in the field because you want to DH him in the second game of a doubleheader is nonsense. Can we stop doing this? We have to win ball games. We have to put our best lineup out there every single day. And then you see they don't want to call up Florial. They don't want to call up Peraza, despite the fact that we could use them right now because we need defense. We don't have outfielders, and we're getting Bader back, but great. That's one. We still don't have a left fielder. We still don't have a right fielder. This team's refusal, absolute refusal to try anything different is just baffling to me, and it's really annoying, and that's what I'm most upset about. Of course, we got swept by Boston. We're playing like crap. It's terrible, but this team's absolute refusal to admit a mistake, try something different, and let's try to get somewhat of a team here before we get Judge back, because obviously losing him doesn't help, but when you look at Rizzo's been terrible, Stanton's been terrible, Donaldson we know is bad, DJ's terrible. The only one of our main guys that's actually hitting right now is Gleyber Torres, but he was cold before he had a good series against the Red Sox. So when does it end? Like, you can point the blame all over the place. The lineup isn't hitting. The pitching struggled this series. The manager, the hitting coach, the pitching coach, the GM. But this has been a problem for so long. The roster construction is bad. And I get it. You can only have so many plan Bs on a 40-man roster. But at what point do you say, all right, we have a couple of young players that are killing it in AAA, and all it's going to cost us is cutting 37-year-old majorly declining Josh Donaldson or IKF and one of these 3 minor league contract journeymen. Why not do it? I don't care if Florial strikes out 30% of the time. His OPS in the minors right now is nearly 1,000. Even if he's like a 240 hitter and he gets on base over 300 OPS on base percentage, his OPS is like 750 to 800. Isn't that better than what you're getting out of a guy like IKF, out of a guy like Donaldson? I mean, try it. Why aren't we trying something different? That's my biggest issue, is why aren't we trying something different? And it's Brian Cash, and all points back because he doesn't want to.
Yeah. So let's have a look at this roster, because my big takeaway from this is not that Aaron Judge is hurt. Oh, we'll be fine when Aaron Judge comes back. Yeah, we'll be better when Aaron Judge comes back. But I've never known a team that's more reliant on one guy than Aaron Judge. It's quite spectacular that with a $300 million payroll, you look and you go one key injury and the whole thing is falling apart. It's like a house of cards. The whole thing has just collapsed. And that's why I can't really blame it all on Aaron Judge being hurt, because it's on Brian Cashman to build a roster that can at least play 500 ball when he's hurt. At worst, just slightly below 500. Okay, that'll keep you alive. But this team is so far off that without Aaron Judge, and it's all on Brian Cashman for what he's built. So, let's start with the outfield. So Bader's obviously been hurt, right? So the Yankees started this season with two outfielders. Let's just be completely 100% honest. They went into this regular season with two outfielders. The rest were DHs and infielders being converted over there. That is not a recipe for success, right? So for most of this season, our two outfielders have been hurt. So instead, we've had Oswald Cabrera, who's obviously an infielder playing outfield, and looks like he's really struggling right now. He's been sent down again for the second time. IKF is obviously an infielder who's been asked to play center field. And Calhoun and Bowers, they can't play outfield. They are both horrific outfielders. When did the Yankees stop caring about defense? I've never seen a worse defensive outfield with those two guys injured. It's spectacular. That means that any fly ball that goes out there, there's a very strong chance that 2/3 of the time that ball's going to drop, and a lot of it's going to be the outfield's fault. It puts in a lot of pressure on our pitchers, and it's not fair. That's a big thing, right? So we've got that situation right now where you've got Calhoun and Bowers, who are, let's say, retreads and journeymen. Okay, they're out there. That's a big. They have had a lot of at bats already. Okay, then you look at our catcher situation. We've got two below average major league hitters at the catcher spot. Right, Higashioka is terrible on both sides of the ball this year, and Trevino is a fine defensive catcher, but he can't hit worth a shit. So that's our catcher spot. And now you also look at our infield. Rizzo, he's old, but he's good. But he's not a guy that can. He's not the Rizzo of the Chicago Cubs. Let's be honest. He's still very good, but he ain't the Rizzo of the Cubs. Okay, Torres is our best hitting infielder, but he's a flawed player. Volpe looks lost, completely lost. I have very little faith in him turning this around with this current coaching staff with Dylan Lawson. I think he's lost because it took Austin Wells uncovering the fact that Volpe had a hitch in his swing, which I've been saying, which a lot of people have been saying is quite plainly obvious. But Dylan Lawson, our employed hitting coach, seemed to miss that. And then you're also the fact that he's really struggling defensively, and he made a horrible mistake there yesterday with a ball that he easily should have caught, but somehow managed to drop, and that put the Yankees in a terrible hole, and in the end, it cost them the game. So defensively, he's struggling right now too. Offensively, he's lost. Third base, Josh Donaldson is a joke. As Pete Simonetti says, he should be shot out of a cannon. I echo those sentiments. He should be shot out of a cannon. And DJ LeMahieu, he looks a very, very old 35, like an ancient 35, like a 50. 35 going on 50 is what he looks like. And that's your infield. And that's our roster. That is our roster. So apart from Giancarlo Stanton, who's injured most of the time, I don't have much faith in the power in this lineup. It's Stanton and Rizzo. And then after that, there ain't nothing other than Gleyber Torres. But we know what Gleyber Torres is. I don't think he's the same Gleyber Torres as what we had prior to moving him to shortstop and then moving him back, and he's not been the same player since. But he's still been okay. But that's really all you've got offensively, and that's a real indictment on Brian Cashman. How could $300 million bring you no depth, two outfielders, no hitting catchers, and no power in the infield, and no power in the outfield without Judge? That is horrifying. Horrifying. Rob, what are your thoughts on the roster?
Yeah, I mean, and you said we went into the season with two outfielders. One of them was Aaron Hicks. And we know what he is, or at least what he was for us, which was a bad player. He's been really good for Baltimore, and you wonder, again, that's another, what does that mean that they were able to immediately? Now, how long is that going to last? I don't know, but he got there after being historically bad for so long, and they said, here's an idea. Why don't you go back to the way you were swinging the bat and the way you were standing in your 2018 season, which was your best season of your career, and now he's hitting again. Why didn't the Yankees think of that? And again, I don't know how long it's going to last, but remember when Gallo went to LA and for a little bit he was hitting again? You're like, well, they found something in his swing. And then earlier this year, Gallo was a guy that was hitting the ball well, and you're like, why couldn't you do that for the Yankees? Because the Yankees have one philosophy. They just have one philosophy. And Joey Gallo should have fit them like a freaking glove, but he didn't. But they don't want to change things. They want you to do what they tell you to do. And the fact that it took a double-A catcher over a plate of chicken parm to say, this is what you need to fix. And Volpe's like, you know what, you're right. And up until the doubleheader, Volpe's at-bats were looking really good. He was starting to see the ball better. He was going down the line. He was going the other way. But he had a terrible, terrible series against Boston. Then again, so did the entire offense. But like, why are we not fixing things? You have all these guys in your analytics department, and you have all these different people that can tell you what's wrong with a player, and they're not doing it. And again, why not? I go back to my earlier point. Why not try something else? Because you have Peraza sitting there in AAA, rotting away. He is murdering AAA pitching. He is too good for AAA. And do I think Estevan Florial is going to be a star in the major league level? No. Do I think he's the answer for this offense? No. But do I think he's a better option than what we have? Absolutely. Let's find out if he's a quadruple A player or not, because he hasn't been given a real chance. He's been given sporadic at-bats over the last 4 years. You're not going to learn anything about a player. He was once one of your top prospects. And again, we're talking about strikeouts with him. This is the same team that traded for Joey Gallo. And they want to talk about strikeouts. This is the same team that has Josh Donaldson, DJ LeMahieu striking out a ton. Aaron Judge strikes out a ton. Giancarlo Stanton strikes out a ton. We care about strikeouts all of a sudden. That's why we're holding him back when we clearly need defense as well as offense. Estevan Florial makes that play that Bowers couldn't against the Monster. And maybe we win that game. And maybe we don't get swept. At the very least, we're not getting swept in Fenway. And we can say, oh, at least we took one. It wouldn't be great, but it wouldn't be a sweep. And this is what we're trotting out there. And again, Bowers has been fine with the bat, but he's not an outfielder. He's not.
No.
And you can put Stanton in right field from time to time. You can DH Bowers if that's the case, but just get a legitimate outfielder out there with Bader. And Stanton's a fine right fielder, and we know that he's better when they play him in the outfield, and they don't want to do it yet. There's so many issues. And again, you broke down the entire roster. We didn't spend on the offense at all. We didn't. We brought back Judge, we brought back Rizzo, and we didn't add anybody except for minor league contracts. We didn't sign a left fielder. That was our biggest criticism of the offseason. I like the Rodon signing, but if you're going to go ahead and say they could have put that money to a guy like Nimmo or something, or to a guy like Yoshida, that would have been a better option because we needed the offense more than we needed the pitching, despite the fact that I love the Rodon signing, and I think he's going to be really good when he's healthy. Our pitching was never the issue. I mean, look at it. Without Rodon and without Sevy for such a long time this year, and Montas, the pitching was actually doing pretty well. It wasn't the issue. And now the offense, once again, like it was in the playoffs, isn't hitting. And it doesn't help that Judge is out. But you have so many holes now in this roster. And when your three best players are all ice cold at the same time, this is what you get. in the 13, 14 games without Aaron Judge this year, we've scored more than 5 runs, I think 3 or 4 times. And we have like 8-12 or 8-13 without Aaron Judge this year. It's below 500. So again, we are very lucky to have him. We're very lucky to have him back, but this all points back to the GM not putting $300 million to good use. I mean, FJ, I don't even want to ignore you in the comments here, but he brought it up.
Yeah, because he's trying to spend. Shout out to FJ.
Urshela and Correa. It's not even. Look, I would have taken Correa in a heartbeat, but it's not even that. You look at the players that he missed out just this past year. Correa was one of them, but they wanted Volpe to be the guy. I'm not going to say that's a bad idea, but you could have had a left fielder, could have had Yoshida, you could have had Benintendi back, you could have got Conforto, you could have had Bellinger on a 1 year. There were options, and they didn't sign anybody. They said, we're going to go with Cabrera, we're going to go with Hicks, we're going to go with these minor league players, and look at where we're at now.
Yep.
You know, this has been an issue for a while. He didn't add anybody. We could have traded 2 years ago for Matt Chapman instead of Josh Donaldson, and they didn't do it. You know, like that was
would have been perfect. He's a power guy that plays excellent defense. Yeah. That's what you wanted from the hot spot. But Brian Cashman is too smart for that.
Wanted him to play shortstop. That's what they wanted him to play shortstop. So again,
him at third base.
And then we got Donaldson. So why couldn't we? If we would have made a trade for Matt Chapman, right, like the way the Blue Jays did, we could have had Chapman at third. You probably have Urshela play short. And how much different does his team look right now? A lot different, because you have 2 professional hitters out there, and just there's so many issues. And again, I keep saying it like a broken record. Try something different. I don't know if Peraza and Florial would save this team, but if you get Bader back and he's hitting the way he was prior to the injury, because he's been a really good hitter for us, and you add guys like Florial and Peraza that want to be here, that can provide a jolt. And then maybe a guy like Rizzo can, with some actual protection and a decent lineup behind him, can start hitting. And then when Stanton gets hot, you know it's hard to stop him when he gets hot. We need that right now. And if you have 5 or 6 guys that are hitting at a pretty decent clip, you can survive this Aaron Judge injury. Let's say he's back in August. Like, let's say it's worst case scenario. It takes him till August to come back. You can survive that if you're just playing a little bit above 500 ball, 500 or better. You just got to survive it, but you're not going to do that when you're relying on these journeyman outfielders that can't play the outfield, and disgustingly aging Josh Donaldson, and this really bad roster that you have right now. You need to find a way to get Rizzo and Stanton hot, but even then, those 2 aren't going to carry the offense alone. They need to have better hitters around them, so Bader's going to help. Peraza would definitely help because he needs to be up here. You need to learn what you have in him. And why not learn what you have in Florial? Because it can be a gift. Your left fielder could fall into your lap. And if he doesn't hit, guess what? At least you took a shot, and you can just dump him again. And maybe somebody picks him up. But the Yankees cut him. Nobody picked him up. He fell back into your lap, and now he's absolutely murdering AAA pitching. Yep. You could have your answer to left field, and you not even know it. Just put him out there. See what he can do in the next month and a half without Aaron Judge.
You're going to lose. You're losing anyway.
Exactly. You have nothing to lose. And they're not even giving him a shot. Instead, they call up McKinney. And yeah, McKinney's been fine. But you can keep him on the roster. He can be your right fielder. He can be your left fielder. But get Florial in there too. There's no reason to keep Calhoun right now. He's a bench player at best. And if you want Bowers to stay, you can keep him on the bench. You can have a bench of Higashioka or maybe Rortvet one day when he gets healthy again. Bowers, IKF, and Billy McKinney or whatever. DJ LeMahieu technically would be your other bench player. That's a much better bench than what we're trotting out there right now. And at least you're going to get everyday at-bats to Peraza. You're going to actually be able to see legitimately with good playing time what you might have or might not have in Estevan Florial. And even if it doesn't work out with Florial, at least you say, we gave it a shot. Instead of trotting out a 30-year-old journeyman outfielder who can't play the outfield, we're going to give that shot to a 25-year-old who used to be one of our own top prospects, and we're going to give him a second chance to really grow into his own as a major league player. And
It's a
even
very important point you're
yeah,
making. It's a very important point. And to emphasize that point, there is no upside to losing with journeyman. There is no upside. There is no upside. Even if they're winning with journeyman, there's actually very little upside. You want to develop your prospects. This is the ideal opportunity. When your team is struggling, you need upside because you want to learn what you have. This is your ideal opportunity to learn what you have on your minor league system. It can save tens of millions if you could call up Peraza and he is your everyday infielder. Saves you tens of millions having to invest in third base, right? That's a great start. Outfield. We don't have a left fielder. If they call up Florial, and I'm not saying this is what's going to happen because I'm not sure whether he's any more than a quadruple A player, but he's definitely better than triple A, and he's definitely better than what we're trotting out. So at worst, he comes in and gives you somebody that can catch the ball in the outfield. You're already winning because none of our outfielders can catch the frickin' ball, right? But what I'm talking about is upside. You call up Florial, and what if he actually becomes that top prospect? You don't know. Hell, who knows? Maybe he actually starts crushing the ball. Guess what? You got your answer in left field. You've saved yourself tens of millions of having to invest in left field. That's what I'm talking about. That's the upside. There is no upside to losing with this bunch of retreads and never have beens. Journeyman and never have beens have been playing most of the time for the Yankees, and this is what we've got. There is no upside to this. None. And that's so stupid. It's a brain dead philosophy when you've got guys in their low to mid 20s who are crushing AAA pitching, who are clearly better than what we have on the major league roster, not getting an opportunity in favor of never has-beens. Just because Brian Cashman wants to be, in his egotistical, narcissistic way, better than everyone else because guess what? I gave a shot to Bowers when no one else would give him a shot. I'm giving this chance to Willie Calhoun when no one else can give a shot. That's all he's interested in. You cannot tell me that Willie Calhoun and these dudes that we're sending out there are better than Florial and Peraza. It's so stupid. It's a brain dead philosophy. And you cannot tell me that Wells will not be a better offensive catcher than Higashioka.
Even Rortvedt would be. And Rortvedt's hurt right now. But like, it's just, I said it yesterday before game one. You can't tell me Florial isn't better than any of these guys we have starting in the outfield. And I think our outfield was McKinney, Bowers, and IKF. I'm like, you can't tell me that Florial isn't better than any one of those guys. And I like what McKinney's done. I like what Bowers has done. But Bowers specifically is not an outfielder. McKinney's been a little bit better, but he's also not very good in the outfield. And IKF doesn't hit. He had a good week. Good for him. But he's still a very below average hitter this year. Let's not forget that. He's a bench player. You want to keep him on the bench for utility? Fine. I'm perfectly fine with that because he has speed. He can play defense all over the place, and he can play the outfield pretty well. Let's give him some credit. But he's not a starter. He should not be an everyday player. But he is for us because we are refusing to try something different. That's all I ask. That's all you're asking. That's all the fans are asking because we're tired. We're tired of watching the same team every single day. If you cut Josh Donaldson right now, you're sending a message is like, we need to get this going. But by sending out the same team every single day and watching the same result, we can't score more than 3 runs. And we can't score after the first inning, apparently. We scored 2 runs in the first game, didn't score again. We scored 1 run on a ground out last night in the second game and didn't score. And this is what you're sending out there.
We don't draw any walks.
No walks. They can't get on base, which is what the Yankees have been based off for so long, is taking pitches, working at bats, taking your walks. And even Dylan Lawson said that, we'll take your walk and hope the next guy comes up. Well, then teach them something different than stop having them swinging everything out of the zone. Like, just put a product out there because I guarantee you people will still go to the stadium to see Oswald Peraza and Anthony Volpe play rather than watching Donaldson and Calhoun. Like,
that's what I'm saying.
It's such an annoying philosophy.
This situation. I would be okay if we lose games as long as we're playing our guys who we can try and develop, our Volpes and Perazes and our Wells and our Florials and these guys. I want to give these guys an opportunity. And while we wait for Aaron Judge to come back, if we play this kind of standard of ball, well, listen, we can go. You know what they're learning, but we're not learning anything from this situation. But I do want to give a shout out to Sunil. It's really good to see him. I've not seen him in the chat in a while, so a big shout out to Sunil. He's always been a good supporter of ourselves. Donaldson should retire and go to Hollywood. He'd be perfect to play a real live action version of one of the two of Beavis and Butthead. Yeah, 100%, man. You're absolute facts, and that's the funny thing, man. We're paying $10 million for Aaron Hicks to play for another team, and let's be honest, we'd be better off with Josh Donaldson playing for another team because Josh Donaldson actually hurts us by playing. He's that bad. We'd be better having nobody play in his spot. And we would be better because he's that much of a negative. We don't win with him. We've never have won with him, and we never will win with him. He is freaking terrible. Cut his ass. Bring up Peraza. He can play third base. It's so stupid. Damien, great point. The fact is, this team should not have to survive because one player who gets 4 at bats is not playing. Exactly. Exactamundo. Facts. Absolutely facts.
Right. It's a shame that that's what it's come to. And yes, Aaron Judge is the best player in baseball. He's an absolute superstar. But the fact that when one player goes down, this is something you said earlier in the show, and everything falls apart, that tells you what this team is. This is what this team would have been had they never re-signed him. Imagine if he went to San Francisco, and I've said this already countless times on the show, had they let him walk this offseason, whether it was to the Giants or the Padres or somewhere else, this is what would be the norm for the New York Yankees. They would be so far below 500 right now. They would be sellers at the deadline, and we'd be potentially looking at another fire sale, technically like 2016, where if Li, I don't think he's in the chat, but Li could get his wish, and they'd start trading off some pieces. That's what this team would be without Aaron Judge. And when he was in the lineup this year, we're hitting the ball, we're scoring more than 4 or 5 runs a game, we're winning games. We had one of the best records in baseball, not just the American League, but all of baseball when we had Aaron Judge. And then he goes down and we're 6 games below 500 without him. And all of a sudden we're clinging into a tie now for that third wild card spot. Even if we survive, I feel like this is going to be 2021 all over again, where we just sneak in. And what's going to happen to us? We're going to play the first round, the wild card round, against probably the team that wins the West. I think that's how it would work. We might have to face the Texas Rangers in the first round. Are we getting past Texas right now? I don't think so, even with Aaron Judge, because this team doesn't hit. But maybe if you have Peraza come up here now and grow from this point till September, till October, and Florial and Volpe can start getting hot, those are 3 young pieces that you can build a future around. Because Florial's only 25. You have Aaron Judge for the rest of his career. You have Rizzo for at least another season. You still have Stanton for 4 more years after this year. You can build something, and you can have something. Yeah. They won a World Series without Acuna. They were able to survive without their best player. Why can't we do it? So it's a real problem. It's a real problem.
Like Brian Cashman and his cronies could try and sell us that injuries is the reason why this team isn't doing well. But as we've gone through this roster, where are you expecting upside? Where are you expecting them to actually do better? Right? Let's go through it. DJ LeMahieu is 35. Josh Donaldson's 37. Okay? We're not getting anything more from Josh Donaldson. He's shot. He can't catch up with fastballs. He's shot. DJ LeMahieu might get better. He might. But he's old. So there's very little upside there, right? Volpe, I don't know. He's not in his prime. He's still learning. So I wouldn't expect much from Volpe either. Torres, he's pretty much hitting as you would expect. He's doing exactly what you probably expect. He's been above average. That's his level right now. I don't really expect much more than that. Rizzo, to be honest, he was batting over 300 until he had his neck injury, and he's cooled off. Like, how much more would you expect from him? but maybe incrementally a little bit more from Rizzo. Okay, that's one guy. Let's have a look at the rest of it. Stanton, you could definitely expect more from Stanton. Like, this is a joke. What he's giving you, that's a joke. So that's two. Okay. Willie Calhoun is giving you more than you'd have expected. Bowers is giving you more than you would have expected, and IKF is giving you more than you could have expected. To be honest, because none of these guys are everyday major league players. In fact, you could make an argument that only one of the three guys are actual major league players. Right? Uh, so then you look at that, and then you're looking at Higashioka. What more could you expect from Higashioka? This is who he is. He's not a very good player. He doesn't really excel on either side of the ball, right? Trevino is a defensive first catcher, okay? So again, you look at this roster, I've named basically everybody. Where are you going to see this upside? I've named all of them, and I can only see two of them that could maybe give you a little bit more than what you're currently getting, and that's Rizzo and that's Stanton. But the rest, I think that they're pretty much doing as you would have expected. DJ LeMahieu, I never knew that he'd struggle this much, but he struggled a lot last year, and I'm starting to think that maybe he's just injured a lot. So that's it, man. That's our roster. And all of those guys I've mentioned, you could maybe even throw in DJ LeMahieu to play better. But again, none of these guys are in their prime. None of them. They're all past their best. And that's terrifying. And that is why, with a $300 million payroll and your best player is out, that's why this team can't hit. Because I've gone through this roster and I've actually named about a bunch of these guys that are playing exactly what you would have expected them to play, if not more, if not better. So there isn't much more that this team can produce. And this team is 13th in on-base percentage out of 15th in the American League. Out of 15 teams, they're 13th. And it's the worst on-base percentage in the Yankees' history in the DH era. The worst, right? And even if you discount the DH era, it would be the second worst since 1968. So you go through this, and this is a complete and utter disgrace. I don't want to hear anything about Aaron Judge's injuries because there's no excuse for the fact that this team cannot hit the ball. None.
Yeah, and look at the lineup from after the game yesterday. You have three players that were above a 770 OPS, or at least 770 or above. That's Gleyber Torres, Jake Bowers, and Billy McKinney. McKinney's played like 12 games. So
yeah,
can you really count
better than what you would have expected?
Yeah, right. But can you really use him as an example? Like, well, we got McKinney hitting well. He's been up here for literally a handful of games. Like, that's 10, 12 games. You really can't be like, he's a stud, because it can go away in a heartbeat. Bowers has actually been really cold up until this series. He had a good series, but he had been ice cold. Rizzo's dropped all the way to a 768 OPS. He was way above that. He's been terrible. Stanton's dropped to a 708. 708. He was nearly 900, I think, when he came back. There's no end in sight. Josh Donaldson's a 724, but he's hitting 150 because his only hits have been home runs in games that we've lost. He's hit those meaningless home runs that people say Giancarlo Stanton does. That's been Josh Donaldson this year. He's hit meaningless, garbage time home runs that don't matter. Where is it? There's no upside. There really isn't. So at least now, if you do get those two guys up here that we've been talking about, when you get Bader back tomorrow night, you can say, okay, well, we can hope Bader is hitting the way he was, and that can hopefully, if you get Florial and Peraza, you have something to look forward to in the lineup, that two young guys that can provide some energy, and that can hopefully unlock something, get something back, get that spark back to a guy like Rizzo and Stanton. All of a sudden, and then Volpe might start clicking as well. Because if there's more speed in this lineup and there's more guys on base, they can try different things just to get something going. All of a sudden, things could look a little bit better. But it's going to start with Rizzo and Stanton. LeMahieu has to get better, but you have to try something different. You're learning nothing with Josh Donaldson that you already didn't know. You know what he is. He's bad. He's been bad. And the only reason they didn't cut him is because they didn't want to pay him next year. But I think he's only going to cost you $6 million next year because of his contract becomes a mutual option for 2024. If that's the case, cut him right now. Mm-hmm. Cut him right now and get Peraza up here. Why are we letting this kid rot? Why are we letting him rot? It's so unfair, and he can provide you something. What that is, I don't know. But you can have a lineup with Bader, Volpe, Florial, and Peraza. That's all speed right there. Those are all guys that can run very well, and you can create offense with speed. The San Diego Padres had to manufacture a run by bunting, getting guys on base, and speed. We might have to try that right now. I don't like to bunt. I don't like to play the whole small ball thing, but when you can't hit, you have to create offense any way you can. So if you have that speed element, if Volpe drops a bunt, he could beat out that throw. That could get him going. Sometimes it's something as small as a bunt can get a player going. Let's try it. Let's try something different because what you're doing right now isn't working. And Lawson, what did they say? You think guys are trying to do too much? He goes, it could be. He doesn't even know. He doesn't know the answer.
I didn't even know that Volpe had a hole in his swing.
It's so bad. And why don't we just say, look, this isn't working. Our season hasn't slipped. It's not over yet. I still think we make the playoffs. But even if we make it as a third wildcard team, like I said, do we expect us to win a series with the way this team is playing right now, even with Aaron Judge? I don't know. But if we can try something different, we can save this season because the way it's headed, we could be, if Judge is out until August, we could be leaning towards a seller at the deadline. We might have to trade away some pieces, or we could just be hovering where there were a couple of games out of that third spot. But that shouldn't be where we are. That should not be where this team is. We should be a hell of a lot better.
Why is guys like Willie Calhoun and IKF, and we could even name other dudes, have had more opportunities than Florial? He's at 57 at-bats in the majors. What are you going to learn from that? How do you know what you have? Why? It's such a stupid philosophy. Why are we continuing with these reachheads and journeymen? We don't know what we have in Florida, but we know what we have in them.
We're giving IKF so many at-bats.
Another team's AAA to ask us to play everyday majors, and he's about the age of 29, 30. That means that he is a journeyman, and he's not going to give you any upside. What do you think is going to happen? It doesn't make sense what their philosophy is. It just doesn't make sense, and it's so freaking frustrating. I just want an actual idea out there. Why is Peraza being ignored? Why doesn't he have as much opportunity as Volpe? And I like Volpe, but why is he not being given that same opportunity? Because he hasn't. He never has been. He's not the golden child, even though he's done much more than Volpe has.
Yeah.
In a much smaller sample size. Much more. Yeah. And he looked far more competent at shortstop. So, it's so freaking mind-blowing. I think Volpe is a second baseman. I don't think he's got the arm to play shortstop. Right? Peraza is a shortstop. He's the best shortstop we have in the system. But he's not playing in the majors. There are so many problems here. And it's just mind-blowing. It just doesn't make sense. And it really pisses me off. The losses don't really affect me because I'm not surprised. This team can't win without Aaron Judge. I'm not angry at the losses. I'm angry at the stupidity of the organization. Because this idea that they're just going to run out all these journeymen and lose is acceptable. No, it's not acceptable. That's just completely stupid. But let's break down the games. 15-5. I mean, that was a joke. A complete joke. And the defense was worse. There was horrific defense everywhere you look. Balls flying everywhere. Nobody could catch anything. And nobody could hit anything. And the pitching was abysmal. Again, IKF had to go in and pitch an inning because this team was shot. What did you thought of the 15-5 game?
I didn't think Herman was going to blow up like that. He had been good, but once that happened, I knew that this was going to be a bad series. I'm like, I don't know how they rebound from that because even though the fact that we scored 5 runs, like we're giving up 15 a game. We used IKF as a pitcher, and he gave up some runs, and it's like nothing went well, and it was just so sloppy. And it was such a precursor to what we were going to see the next 2 games. Bad baseball. Just such bad baseball all around. And that's what it's been for the last 13 games or so. It's just been bad baseball. Like 15-5 against the Red Sox, we should be furious. And I was just like, you know what? That's kind of to be expected with this team right now. And that's what it's come to.
Exactly.
It's bad. I never want to be that person where I'm just like negative all the time, but I can't watch this team right now and be like and get excited for Yankee baseball because they're not giving me a reason to. And that game against the Red Sox at 15-5 is exactly why. It's like the pitching is eventually going to hit a wall where they start to struggle. And we're starting to see that a little bit. When the offense can't score, even if the pitching is able to if they give up like 4 or 5 a game, which is a bad night for our pitching, it doesn't matter because we're not going to score 6, right?
100%.
So they could have scored 30 in that game, and it wouldn't have mattered because we weren't going to score in that first game. So they could have beat us 30-5, and it would have been like the same thing.
Let's have a look at some of the people in the chat. TC Steels, salute. Hype Beast, I would say time for a rebuild, but before that can happen, we need to rebuild the front office. You're going to get a star for that one, my guy. Brian Cashman hasn't earned another rebuild. And this just reminds me of the year before we ended up having to trade all our guys and then start again with the Baby Bombers in 2016, 2017, because we continue to go down this path of has-beens and never has-beens and dudes that are far too old. And that's a Brian Cashman thing. This is a whole Brian Cashman creation. Jonathan, good to see you in the chat. Yankees need to break down this team 100%. Damian, no, FJ, they are just this bad. They are just this bad. Sunil, everyone's making a thing out of Rodon returning. He's not helping our offense one bit. The pitching has been fine. Apart from that 15-5 outlier, the pitching was fine. The pitching was fine yesterday. It wasn't great, but it was fine. The problem is the offense, and the problem is the defense. I looked at that. You look at that game, the night game, the Father's Day game. That night game, Severino was okay. He was keeping you in the game. His fastball had a little bit more life to it and a little bit more velocity. He wasn't great. He was getting hit a little bit, but he was getting out of trouble. Until Higashioka gave the Red Sox a run. He was like, "Oh, here's a run, guys. I'm gonna interfere with a batter." Oh, that was smart. Thanks, Higgy. You awesome defensive catcher, you right? And then a pop up to the infield, and Anthony Volpe drops it, and somehow that's not an error. It was in his glove, and he dropped it. I'm sorry, Volpe. You got to make that play 100 times out of 100. If you're in the major league level, you got to make that play. That's a joke. Now I don't know whether the fact we don't have a center fielder who maybe could have called him off and maybe he would have made the play, but we've got 2 below average guys right there defensively, in my opinion, and that's what you get, right? So defense for me was a problem last night, a huge problem last night. Those are runs that they gave the Red Sox, and that's the difference in the game. That was the difference, and we had multiple opportunities to score a run. And the only run we scored was from a ground out from Rizzo. And that's it. So I'm sorry. I can't look at the pitching. I can't say that Rodon's going to magically fix this because the pitching's been fine. We've got the best bullpen in the majors right now. And the team still sucks.
And go back to that first game. If Bowers knows how to play the monster, which he doesn't, then Clark Schmidt doesn't. He gets out of that. He gets out of that jam. And maybe they win, like I said earlier, maybe they win that first game of the doubleheader. And then again, the defense last night doesn't help Sevy. Sevy was finally getting swings and misses with that fastball. The velocity was up. He was getting swings and misses. Yeah, he was getting hit a little bit, but it was better than what we had seen his previous 3 starts. And it would have been reason to be like, all right, maybe he's starting to get back to form. He's got a few starts under his belt. Let's get Sevy back to being Sevy. But it wouldn't have mattered even if he gave up 2 runs. The Yankees couldn't score anything after a ground out in the first. This is what it has come to. We went 18 innings yesterday of baseball, and we scored 3 runs. 3 all came in the first inning. So we couldn't score for 16 innings. We could not score a run. That is bad. And 2 of them came on one swing from Gleyber Torres' bat. We can't score, and we had chances. We've gotten guys on base thanks to bad defense from Boston. And, yeah, Rizzo got robbed because he hit it to as deep as you possibly could in Fenway, and Duran just made a hell of a play on the ball.
That was a great play.
It was a great play.
Legit bad luck.
was bad luck. But again, the rest of the night we had chances. Stanton's coming up, big spot. Maybe he can do something, strikes out. And then Donaldson's up as a tying run. What does he do? Ground out. And then he gets on base earlier in the game, and he gets himself thrown off. Gets picked off. What are you doing, Josh Donaldson, trying to steal a base? 37-year-old Josh Donaldson? Like,
Dude, this
what are we doing?
better with Mr. Potato Head playing third base. Honestly.
They would. It's just bad all around. So it didn't matter if they lost every single game where the pitching gave up 4 runs a game. The only game we would have won is that first one. But obviously we gave up 15. We could have lost. We could have given up yesterday. Both Schmidt and Severino could have given you 5-6 innings, gave up 3 runs apiece, and the bullpen could have held it down after that. We lose both games. That's how bad this offense has been. So the pitching, even with the 15-run debacle, I am not going to crap on Domingo Germán right now because he's been really good this year outside of that start, and he had a really bad start earlier and the suspension thing, obviously. But other than that, he's been good, more than I could have asked of him, and he wasn't even in our rotation to start the season. Schmidt's been a hell of a lot better since the calendar turned to May. He was terrible, and now he's looking more like a serviceable starter. Garrett Cole's Garrett Cole. Sevy looked better last night despite the defense not helping him out. So Rodon can come back, and what's going to – even if Rodon pitches you 9 innings and he gives up like 1 run, are we going to score a run? That's what it is right now. We don't know. Like if we get into a 3-0 hole, we don't feel like we can come back and win that game. No. Where with Aaron Judge, we felt like we can come back.
1 or 2-0, I don't feel we're coming back.
Yeah, and that's a terrible feeling to have, and that's because the entire offense, outside of maybe Torres and McKinney, are not consistent. You have 2 hitters that have been consistent over the past 12 games that Aaron Judge has been out. 2!
Yeah.
Out of a 9-man lineup. That's a recipe for disaster, and guess what it's been since Aaron Judge got hurt? A disaster.
And one person who's gotten kind of lucky out of all this is Aaron Boone. He's gotten very little heat, in my opinion. He's kind of coasted because, listen, this team is a complete and utter clusterfuck, right? Complete clusterfuck without Aaron Boone. But Aaron Boone doesn't help things with what he said last night. Because he said, for the most part, this team is playing well. So let's listen to his interview, and I'm going to finish off with this episode with a little bit of Aaron Boone because he doesn't escape the criticism either. Good job, Aaron. What do you think about this Yankee team right now?
For the most part, we've been playing pretty well. We just haven't scored a lot, and we find ourselves on the losing side of things. So we got to, the biggest thing right now is just collectively, offensively, we got to find a way and kind of turn the page and know that, this is a little bit of a tough stretch, but can't all do it by yourself. And that, I've been there many a times as a hitter that want to be the guy and start getting outside yourself. You got to go control what you control, and that's having a good at bat and winning pitches. And when we can do that collectively, then we can take off offensively. For the most part.
Wow. So talking about clusterfuck, that whole segment right there was a clusterfuck. That clusterfuck of 40 seconds right there. For the most part, we're playing well. If you can't hit, you can't draw walks, you can't even up a pitch count, you can't run the bases, you're getting thrown out on the bases, you can't field, you can't catch, what part of this team is playing well? They lost 15-5, and then lose a doubleheader. It's almost impossible to lose a doubleheader these days because normally you at least split a doubleheader. The Yankees got swept. You know what? I think we're playing pretty well. We just can't hit. Well, what are you talking about? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. I don't even think Aaron Boone believes his own bullshit because apparently the other day he was saying, you know what? We can't focus on not having Aaron Judge. This team is still more than good enough to win. I was like, good for you, man. But guess what? He falls back on his bullshit with that nonsensical statement that we played pretty well this series. We didn't play well. And although I can't really pinpoint a moment during that sweep that Aaron Boone did anything necessarily wrong, right? But if that is your standard, then this team is lost. If that is the standard which he sets, going, hey, you know what? We played pretty well. We couldn't field, we couldn't catch, we couldn't hit, and we got thrown off the bases a number of times. And we gave up like 15 runs in the first game, and we had to get our center fielder to play to pitch out of the bullpen. But apart from that, I think we played pretty well. I mean, that is just a whole lot of horse shit. And stop it. We're not that stupid. You might think we're stupid, but we're not that stupid. Aaron Boone is better off just shutting up. He is much better just shutting up, because then I wouldn't have had to give him this 10 minutes right here, because he doesn't deserve it. He doesn't deserve the airplay. He's not a very good manager, but it's not his fault that this team sucks as is constituted, right? He's shown that he can get you to a certain level if you've got a decent team out there. But this team is so broken everywhere I look that I can't really blame him necessarily, but I can blame him for setting this embarrassing standard where nobody can field and nobody can hit, and they're getting swept by Boston and they're giving up 150 runs, and we're playing well. That is a joke, and that is an embarrassment, and you should be ashamed of yourself, Aaron. Rob.
No, you got to throw in the turning the page line there as well. Yeah. So back to the typical Aaron Boone nonsense. How can you say you played well when you scored 3 runs in a doubleheader against the first game? The pitcher that Boston tried out there stunk, and we couldn't score against him.
Nope.
So that's playing well. You're not a good team, and it's clear as day you're not a good team without your best player, but we're playing well. And had he just said, look, we've got to get it going, he could have thrown out his usual nonsense, but if he just would have left out that one line saying, I think we played pretty well, just like, look, we got to get this going sooner than later, fans might have respected that a little bit more. Even if he threw in the turn the page, we got to play better, we got to get it going, we got to turn the page quick, or, something like that. Give us the typical nonsense, but if the fact that you said we're playing well, what part of this series was played well, aside from the bullpen in a couple of our games, right? Aside from a little bit of the starting pitching, and aside from a couple of swings by Gleyber Torres, what about this series was played well? Nothing. Those are 2 or 3 things maybe that you can say were well played in this series. Your defense was horrible. It cost you a couple of games, and you're going to say we played well. But again, it's like you said, you can't put the blame on Aaron Boone. He's putting out there what the team is giving him. This is what he's been given. He's been given Jake Bowers and Billy McKinney and Willie Calhoun and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, all 4 of them who are not outfielders, to play the outfield for him. This is what he's been given. He's doing whatever he can. So like we can not blame him so much, but then when he says this, it's like, dude, we're trying here. We're trying to like give you the benefit of the doubt, but then you go and say that. Just come out and say it, because Stanton said it, like he goes, I can't make excuses. I got to get going immediately. I can't be doing this. He's taking accountability. But even Rizzo last night was saying like some of the same stuff, like, it's a long season. These are tough stretches that teams are going to go through. I don't want to hear that from the players. I expect it from Aaron Boone, but I want the players to be like, we got to get this. We got to figure this out. We got to do it. And it's so simple. Just don't say we played well, because you didn't.
No.
And then he paused. I think he paused for like a good 2 seconds, because it's like, again, I don't think he believes this stuff. Yeah. Because we saw a different guy last year when the team was winning, and he was answering questions with fire. Like whenever someone would criticize him, he would fire back and be like, no. He didn't use that same nonsense. He didn't say turn the page, turn the corner, because we were playing well, and we had very little to criticize with Aaron Boone. So you're absolutely right. He will take you to a certain level when you have the right team. And last year we were healthy, and we were hitting, we were pitching, everything was going well. Our defense was the best defense in baseball. Let's not forget that. Last year, we had the best defense in baseball. This year might be the worst. It might be the worst. And injuries are a part of that, but also roster construction is a very big part of that as well.
Exactly. And the injuries only can get you so far. The excuses can only get you so far. But if this is the standard that's set by your manager, that it's okay to get swept by Boston because you played pretty well when you give up 30 runs in 2 days, then then it's bullshitting all over the fan base and the organization, and that's where I blame Aaron Boone. And when I say Aaron Boone gets you to a certain level, he's not getting you a World Series. He's going to get you to the playoffs, and then that's it, because that's his level. He is a mediocre manager, if that, right? He's a mediocre manager, but you got to give him a team, and he still manages like this is his first year, and that's unforgivable at this point. But I mean, I still have a hard time blaming him for this team because this team is so bad. It's so bad, and I hate to say it, but the error in Brian Cashman's way was that he kept selling us that this team led the league in runs last year. Right, that's because Aaron Judge had the best year, one of the best years in the history of Major League Baseball. Right, and it's an old damn sport. It's about 100 plus years old, right? And he had one of the best seasons in that 100 plus years. And you can't expect that to continue. Only a stupid man would think that would be replicated, right? He was the reason that they led the league in runs last year, because you take him out, and then this is what you've got. You got a team that's massively below 500, massively. And there's no one else to blame for that. It's not Aaron Judge being hurt. It's not injuries in general, and it's not the wind, and it's not the rain, and it's not fucking Easter Bunny. It's Brian Cashman.
It's not it. You can blame the roof, blame the fans. He can blame he's blamed literally everything he could possibly blame, except for saying, this is on me. He did it once. He said the Montas trade was a bad trade because he got an injured player. He took the accountability for that later than he should have, but he did it. Other than that, he's never once said, this is on me, because, again, remember what they said. It's all about the process. So as long as they feel like their process is going well, the results don't matter. Well, I guess their process is exactly where they want it to be, because guess what? Let's say the worst thing happens with Judge and he has to miss potentially the rest of the season, and this team misses the playoffs. They are going to blame everything on that one guy going down.
They can't wait.
They can't wait for it. So maybe, and if he comes back and they start winning, they're going to say, see, all we had to do is just wait, be patient, and we knew this team would start hitting. But again, it goes back to what people were saying in the chat. It goes back to what Boone said the other day. It goes back to what you've been saying, what I've been saying. It shouldn't be that way. When, as good as Aaron Judge is, and he is the best player in the sport, you should not be struggling the way they are without one player. It should not take one guy for 8 other players to hit the ball. It is embarrassing watching them try to hit the ball without him. And that is what hurt him last year when it came, because he was exhausted trying to carry this team, chase 62, and then look at his bats in the playoffs. He just looked exhausted. You can see it. And we are so lucky to have this guy. But the fact that one player goes down and this is how we play, it has nothing to do with Rodon being hurt. It has nothing to do with Canely being hurt, even with Bader out. Because when Bader came back, and that's something else Lawson said before we end this off, he said that for a little bit before Judge got back, we started to rebound. No, you didn't. You scored 7 runs against the Oakland Athletics. Anyone can score 7 runs against the Oakland Athletics this year. That's rebounding?
And they've got a better on-base percentage than the Yankees do.
Yeah, you go. They do. And you rebounded when Aaron
Judge trying to lose.
That's where it's come. They're a team that's trying to lose.
Whatever happened to next man up? Like, it doesn't exist anymore, Hypebeast.
We've used them all.
Don't you wonder why Brian Cashman was like, he was so non-involved in the Aaron Judge negotiations? Don't you think that he was just hoping upon hope that he would take the Padres offer so that he would have an excuse? Because I think that he knew this team was broken, right? With or without him. And he knew that if Aaron Judge comes back, then all the blame is going to be pointed at Brian Cashman when this thing fucking falls apart, right? Because he's built such a shambolic roster around him, right? If Aaron Judge went to the Padres, then he'd have been like, well, you know what? What can we do? We've lost our best player. We can't recover, right? That would have been his excuse, right? Now that he's re-signed, if he was phenomenal, right? then it still shows that this team is completely reliant on one player. If he gets hurt, right, and they can't hit, again, it looks on Brian Cashman because Brian Cashman can't put a roster around him, right? I wonder, because I don't understand why your general manager was not involved in re-signing your very best player. And I wonder whether Brian Cashman is working for the benefit of this team, because he doesn't make decisions that make sense. He doesn't. So many of these trades have been a disaster. And I'm starting to wonder exactly what his intentions are, because it's so stupid.
Yeah.
So stupid.
It's bad. Like, I mean, we're going to end this off now, but like, there's so many players that he's passed up on that could have been had in trades, and just said, nah, we're not going to do it. Free agency, no. Like, this team could have been so much better. And for the difference in dollars is actually not that much if we would have had a guy like Machado on the roster, or Harper, or Soto. And the payroll would not be much different. And a lot of it goes back to that one trade last year for Donaldson. Like, that has hindered us from doing so many things. And yet they won't get that dead weight off the roster right now for a guy that they said was part of their future in Oswald Peraza. That is what's really pissing me off. So they will not give a guy who they claim to be part of the future. Yeah. He's clearly more than ready. Let him play AAA. He needs more at-bats.
I know. And they don't believe their own bullshit because, the best shortstop in the majors last year, apparently it was IKF. He's now playing center field for the Yankees. So, I mean, they're not exactly buying their own bullshit.
Yep. There you go. You're right. You're absolutely right.
But, Rob, final thoughts. My final question to you would be, we got the off day. Is there a move that they can make that can give this team a spark while we wait till Judge back? Because I don't think we're going to get Judge back until the All-Star break.
Like, ideally, it would be they hit us with the DFA, the cut release of Josh Donaldson. Like the Hicks move came out of nowhere. They get Peraza up here, and they get Florial up here. And they try something different. They say, look, we gotta stop this before it becomes a complete downward spiral, because it's not there yet, but it's getting close. It is very close to rock bottom, and we can't get there. If this team wants to make the playoffs and maybe make a run, who knows what happens when you get there, they have to stop this right now, and maybe those two guys help us do that. Maybe, maybe not. We don't know, but we're never gonna know if we don't at least give it a shot and stop trotting out these these has-beens and never has been, as you said it. We can't keep doing the same nonsense. Never will be. There it is. We can't keep doing the same thing, because that is, as we always say, and we've been saying this for you've said it more than anybody on the show. What is the definition of insanity, Donald?
Repeating the same mistakes over and over again and expecting this different result.
And where are we right now? We're doing the same thing over and over again.
I know. What has our podcast been doing? The same thing over and over again for the last 4 years.
Maybe we're insane.
Frickin' Cashman. But I do want to say thank you, everyone, for being with us in the chat. And I do want to wish everybody a happy Father's Day to those that it applies to. And all the fathers out there, salute. And, go Yankees. The Yankees aren't playing hard, so I'm not going to go with Tat's favorite saying until he comes back. But what I will say is salute to all of you. You guys go and enjoy Pete's show, and we'll catch you on the next podcast. Salute, guys.